Cape Verde and back, towards digital nomadism, part 3. The thought of embarking on a trip had rekindled my desire to enjoy life. I had done everything possible to find a job and change my situation, but a stronger force seemed to tell me that this was not the right path. What I knew was that the stagnant energy I was feeling certainly wasn't helping. So I decided to leave for a budget-friendly place, since I had no income, that was by the sea. I needed water. It's the element that nourishes me the most. I thought of Egypt, low coast, breathtaking coral reefs, snorkeling and diving, and warm weather in winter. What a brilliant idea! However, it didn't take long to realize that this would have been a bit purposeless. Then I got the idea that since I had been studying Portuguese for a few months, I could choose a Portuguese-speaking country to practice the language on the ground, Cape Verde. How had I not thought of this before? 10 paradisiacal islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, white beaches, turquoise ocean, surfing, coconuts, handsome guys and much more. It was the right choice. I immediately opened skyscanner.com and searched for a one-way flight to Cape Verde. Given the suddenness of the decision, I wasn't sure if I should head to Boa Vista, Praia or Sol. I would first take a look at the prices. I found a flight for 100 euros to Espargos, Sal Island. I couldn't believe it. I knew that round-trip flights to Cape Verde usually cost around 800 euros. So I was expecting 300-400 for a one-way flight. Instead, it seemed like a sign that I was doing the right thing. Further confirmation that I was on the right path was the fact that this flight had a layover in Brussels, as if to say that I at least had to make a brief stop in the Belgian capital. After all, Brussels had been a great source of inspiration for me and a dream to pursue. Without it in mind, I probably wouldn't have completed my studies in interpreting and translation. The desire to work for the European Parliament had been my driving force during university, so I found it romantic to make a quick stop to say, "Nice to meet you, thank you for being motivational, and goodbye because now I resonate with something different." I bought the flight that would depart in 2 days. Cape Verde. Upon arriving in Cape Verde, I was greeted by the taxi driver who would take me to town, a poor man whom I pestered for half an hour with my broken Portuguese. His native language, by the way, was Cape Verdean Creole, and interacting with me in standard Portuguese was not easy for him. How wonderful it is to travel. I had just arrived and I had already learned something new. Up until that moment, I was convinced that in Cape Verde everyone spoke Portuguese. Furthermore, the simple fact that I was speaking a foreign language I had never practiced before was healing the discomfort I had carried from Italy. It was immensely satisfying. Entering the town, Santa Maria, the landscape surrounding me exuded warmth and life. Men, women, and children in vibrant clothing filled the streets of the village. The women carried water jugs on their heads, and the children laughed and played in the middle of the street, ignoring the traffic. The smile on the face of the people had permeated through the taxi windows and filled my heart. I'm in Africa, I said to myself, realizing it at that very moment. I knew rationally that Cape Verde is in Africa, but being an island in my mind, it was something separate from the continent. A bit like the Canary Islands are indeed Spanish, but being islands, I see that as somewhat standalone. I'm not sure if you also have this perception. In any case, for the first time I had set foot in Mother Africa, and I was really enjoying the feeling. A few minutes later, we arrived in front of the house I had booked. It literally faced the beach. The sea was a turquoise I had never seen before, and the wild palm trees gave the impression of being lost in paradise. But the highlight was the women with wheelbarrows full of fruits and vegetables who came up to me to sell their products. Their eyes were full of joy and love. I really needed that. In Italy, I could no longer see the light in people's eyes, and it was causing me great pain. We got to know each other and even exchanged Facebook contacts so that when I ran out of vegetables, I could ask them to come to my house with more fruits and veggies. What can I say? Faced with such beauty and humanity, it wasn't hard to shake off the depression that had been creeping up on me. I would leave the house in my swimsuit and barefoot. The beach was literally 10 meters from the front door. In the mornings, I would buy fresh fish at the pier. I spent entire days at the beach reading, and often without even returning home to freshen up, I would go directly to nighttime bars where I met people from all around the world and locals who fortunately didn't speak English, so I could practice my Portuguese. Action plan. 2 weeks in Africa had restored the Andrea I recognized in myself. The decision to leave, even though unplanned, had proven to be the perfect remedy. However, I started realizing that staying indefinitely on a nearly deserted island was neither economically sustainable nor made much sense. Being in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and with 99% of air routes requiring a stopover in Europe to reach any other destination, Cape Verde gave you the feeling of being catapulted into another dimension and excluded from the world. But I love the world. I don't want to avoid it. I want to live it fully, travel it far and wide, and confining myself to the island of Sal just because I didn't want to return to Italy seemed like a nonsensical overreach, a matter of illogical and potentially harmful principle. So, I came up with the following plan. Since in any case I wouldn't be able to reach any other place from Cape Verde without passing through the old continent, I decided to return to Italy, find a job as a translator, something I had previously rejected because I saw myself only as an interpreter, for clients in Europe and the United States, so I could have an income from the developed world. Once I had stable clients, I would leave for developing or underdeveloped countries, but continue working for the West. Let's briefly touch on the transition from interpreter to translator, because I think it's important and represents a significant change in my approach to life. Before leaving for Cape Verde, I saw translators as bookworms, locked in a grey room, losing their eyesight day after day from the strain of the monitor. I'm not exaggerating, that's really how I saw translators. However, in Cape Verde, I realized that this was the life I wanted for myself. And being an interpreter in certain circumstances can be quite a challenge. A perfectly silent room and a stable connection with a physical router to connect via Ethernet cable are just some of the prerequisites for offering interpretation services. And if I wanted to keep moving from country to country, these conditions couldn't always be guaranteed. On the other hand, working as a translator would fit perfectly with this lifestyle. Computer-assisted translation tools, cut tools, even work offline. So you only need an internet connection when you download the documents and when you upload the translations. It seemed like an ideal solution for a potential future digital nomad who loves what he studied and doesn't want to give up foreign languages, but at the same time wants to explore the world without being tied to a physical place. It seemed like a well thought out plan. The next step was to book a return flight to Italy. And even though my mind resisted this decision, a voice inside me suggested it was the right thing to do. Return to Europe. After a month in that earthly paradise called Cape Verde, I returned to Italy. This time, however, I was calm. On one hand, the ocean had healed my wounds, and on the other, I had the awareness that I wouldn't stay in Italy for long. The goal in my mind was necessary to see beyond the fog of the Po Valley. In no time, several interpreting and translation agencies started contacting me, I entered into several fruitful collaborations, and before I knew it, I found myself needing to open a VAT number. Rationally, the idea didn't thrill me, but it was the right thing to do. I was going with the flow, and finally I had aligned with the cosmic force that had been working against me for a few months before, but now was on my side. To let it continue working in my favor, however, I had to set aside my mind and fully trust. So I became self-employed, and everything continued to work perfectly. Postscript: astrocartography. As someone curious and passionate about esoteric disciplines, one day, while analyzing my natal chart, I stumbled upon a function that I had never noticed before on the website I used to create and study astrological maps. It was the astrocartographic chart. In short, this discipline uses the individual's natal chart and projects the positions of the planets onto the world map. Visually, you'll see various vertical, straight, and curved lines where each one represents a planet. Astrocartography suggests that if you travels to those lines, you will enter the influence of the corresponding planet, consequently attracting its energy. On Venus line, for instance, it's easier to attract a soulmate because Venus is the planet of love, Mercury for communication, and so on. On that occasion, I discovered that traveling along one's Saturn line helps to understand what one wants to do in life. Mine happened to pass through those tiny dots in the Atlantic Ocean, called Cape Verde. Postscriptum: if you're interested in finding out where your Saturn line passes, you can use the website I use, www.astro.com. I will link it here below. You just need to know your date, time and place of birth. Feel free to contact me privately and I'd be happy to help. To be continued.